Okay, let's kick off. So, hello everyone. Welcome to Cloud and Cloud Technologies training sessions. Today we are going to see a few more topics related to Azure services. So Cloud and Cloud is having an experience of training the associate in different technologies like robotics, Docker, Kubernetes, artificial intelligence, and many, many more. So please do subscribe to our Cloud and Cloud webpage, and also please do follow our newsletter so that you don't miss any updates that is going to be coming in the future. Okay, thank you so much. And I will paste you the links for you in the chat so that you can ask any questions is there. Here you go. So okay, myself, Yasmin Sheikh, and I work with Cognizant Technology Solutions. So I am an Azure and AMCAT certified IT engineer. So as you know, the people who have attended my last session, we have discussed about how we can create a VM, and we have seen how we can the different terminologies we are using in the Azure platform, and also how we can host the web applications in on the virtual machine, and how you can use it via using the public IP address, right? So today we will see in depth more about the disks which we are creating along with our virtual machines, and how we can manage it in our real-time work environment. Okay, so let me go ahead and create one virtual machine for you. Go to the resources, create Windows Server. Okay, I'm going to create a new resource group, and I'm going to call it as resource group 1. Okay. And I'm going to name it as VM1. So I'm not changing anything else. Okay, I'm changing the location to Australia Central as it's very near to me. And yeah, this is the image I have chosen now, Windows image. And this is the size which was allocated by default, D2SV3, which is having 2 virtual CPUs and 8 gigabits of memory. So as of now, I'm not changing anything here. So just I'm giving some name, password. So this is the username and password which you are going to utilize while connecting to the RDP of the virtual machine we are creating. Okay, so I'm allowing the port RDP. Go to disks. So now, as you can see here, we have 3 types of disk here, which is a premium SSD, standard SSD, and standard HDD. So as you know, that standard HDD is only for, we'll be using only for backups and non-critical workloads, whereas standard SSD we will be using for testing and development purposes, and whereas premium SSD will be using for the production purposes. Okay, so because this standard HDD will have a low IOPS and low throughput when compared to the other disk, whereas premium SSD will have high IOPS and high throughput when compared to other these 2 disks. Okay, so as I explained in the last week, so IOPS is nothing but let's say if you have 1 disk, so the read and write operations that it can handle per 1 second is called as a IOPS. So input and output operations that it can handle per second is called as a IOPS, whereas throughput is nothing but let's say if you are storing some video files into that disk, and how much time it's going to occupy to save that data or to retrieve that data from that disk is called as a throughput. Okay, so just a basic introduction for you. So now here, as you can see, I have 3 options, right? So premium SSD, standard SSD, and standard HDD. If I go back here, if I come to the sizes of the VM, let's say I'm choosing some other size, let's say I'm choosing D2V4, select. Okay, so it is also having a 2 virtual CPUs and 8 gigabytes of memory. So now, if I go to the next page, as you can see, I'm having standard SSD. But if I scroll here just a moment. Okay, let me check this one. Go to the sizes. Okay, so I'm choosing this one. If I come here, okay, it should not. Okay, let me refresh the page. create. Creating one resource group. I'm going to call it as VM1. And I'm going to create an Australia Central. I'm going to and D2V4. Okay. And I'm going to give username, password. So now, if I go ahead and select the premium SSD, it's saying an error message saying that this virtual machine size is not compatible with the disk size you selected. So can you understand why? Because I have changed the disk VM size here in the first page. If I go back here, if I go to all sizes, if I go to the disk which I have selected, this one D2V4, if I scroll right to the right, and if you can see here, the premium disk option, it says like it is not supported. So in your production environment, you need to make sure if you are using for the production use, you need to make sure that whatever the disk size you are choosing here should be premium supported. So premium disk supported. Okay, so if you are choosing anything like this, you can create a standard SSD and standard HDD, but you will not be able to use the premium SSD disk option. Okay, so I'm going back to the one which I had earlier by default because I want a premium support. So I have chosen here. So I'm going next. So now you can see it's a premium SSD. If I select even that one, it's not showing any error message because it supports the premium SSD. Okay, so now I'm not going to create anything here, just I'm leaving everything. So if you want to know detailed about the categories and the options which we are creating here, you can just you can refer to my previous session because in that I have explained each and every option what and when we need to use it. So you can utilize that. So okay, now I'm creating one virtual machine, one Windows virtual machine. Okay, let's let it create. Until then, I want to explain you a few things that okay. Let me come back here. Okay, so whatever the disk we are creating along with VM here, like the one which we have selected now, the premium SSD, that's the OS disk. So, okay, that's whenever you are trying to create your virtual machine, automatically there will be like few other resources that will be created along with your virtual machine, right? So in that, the premium SSD, what I have selected is for the OS disk, which means the operational disk. In this, your operating system disk. So in this, your operating system image and its related data will be stored. Okay, so this is the data disk, which means that if you want any additional data, you can go ahead and create this disk. If you don't want, you can just ignore it. Based on your requirement, you can create this one. But this one is optional, but OS disk is like it's by default, it will be created along with your virtual machine. Okay. So now, so when you say that these operating system disk or the data disk, all these disks are managed disks. So when you say managed disk, what is meant by managed? It means that it is completely managed by the Azure platform. Whatever the maintenance and whatever the updates that the physical disk needed, everything will be taken care by the Azure platform itself. And also they will make sure that whatever the data you are storing in your Azure disk is having a high availability. It means they will replicate or they will copy your disk in multiple zones and in the multiple regions to make sure that if any natural disaster is happening in one place, if you are losing your data at one place, so that the backup will be available and that you can retrieve from there. Okay, and it also offers the scalability. Scalability means based on if you want to increase the size of your let's say disk, if you now using 8 gigabytes of memory, but if you want to increase it, you can do that easily with this option, scalability. Okay, and also they are making sure that every type of security is allocated to yours. Not only this usually any resource that Azure is offering is that they are offering some security to each and every resource in one or in other form. Okay, when coming to the disk, they are securing your data in the disk with the many encryption types. Okay, so we will discuss more about the encryption, what are the encryption types we have, and how we can encrypt our data that we are storing in our disks. Okay, let's come back to our virtual machine which we have created now. Okay, go to the resource. So this is the resource with the virtual machine which I have created now. So if I go to the disk in the left pane, I'm going to the disk. So this is my operating system disk, which was created, which I have chosen the premium SSD, and it is having a 126 gigabyte of size, and it's the maximum IOPS it can provide is 500, and maximum throughput it can provide is 100. Okay. So now I'm going to create a new data disk because I want to store few important data and applications related to my project. So I need one extra data disk. So I'm going to create one new one. Okay. So now this is the option. So now you can give any name to your disk. Let's say I'm giving name as data disk 1. Okay, so LUN is nothing but a logical unit number of your data disk. It means it will be helpful for your virtual machine to identify the level of your disk. So if you are creating another data disk below to that, if you want one more data disk, if you are creating here, so that will be allocated as a logical unit 1. So to recognize this data disk in the virtual machine itself, it is allocating one number that is called as a logical unit number. Okay, so I'm leaving it as it is. So I'm scrolling here. So now, so this is the name I have given. It's a 4 gigabytes of memory, premium SSD. If you want, you can change. So just by clicking on the change size, so you have different performance types here based on the IOPS or the throughput you require for your application or for your requirement. You can use the performance type here. So as I am just creating a simple one now, I don't want that high performance ones. So I'm just going with this. Okay, so now I have chosen these options and I'm going ahead and click on save. So if you can see here in the notification, it's creating one disk now. And so it's like a two-step process. What this Azure will do is, first of all, it will create a disk which you have requested with the maximum IOPS or maximum throughput and the size of gigabyte size of memory you have asked. It will create, and then it will be attached to your VM to which you want to. So as we are doing both at the same time here, create and attach a new disk. So if you go to the notification, you can see successfully created the disk. First of all, it has successfully created the disk. Then it has successfully updated your virtual machine with this allocated disk. Okay. So now, so I have one disk allocated here. Now I'm going to the overview of this virtual machine. I want to connect it to my virtual machine, and let's see what's going on in the server side. Okay, so download, connect. So as I told you earlier, so when you launch the RDP file, it will automatically take the Outlook account which you have logged in into your computer. So you need to always go with more choices and use to log in into that particular computer. You need to give the public IP address which of your virtual machine. Okay, so I'm giving it as 20.37.10.44, and the username which I have given is VM1 and password. So this is the credentials which I have given while creating my VM. Okay. So what I have done is I have just created one virtual machine, Windows virtual machine, and I have attached one extra data disk to it because I want to store more data. And I'm trying to remote my virtual machine, and I'm trying to see the extra disk I have created that is available in my virtual machine or not. Okay. So let it load. Okay. Now, if you go to the Explorer, and if you go to this PC, so you can see that this is the OS disk which was allocated by default, and this is the temporary storage disk. This temporary storage disk will be created along with your any virtual machine to store any temporary data like paging files or any memory files. It acts like a cache where you can save your temporary data. Okay, so if you have any critical workloads, don't save here because it will be deleted or it will be deallocated when your virtual machine is stopped or deallocated. Okay, so you can store only like a recent access data so that you can, even though if you lose it, it won't be matter. Okay, so if you have any critical data, you can store here or you can store in the other data disk which you have. So as you can see here, we have added one data disk there in the Azure platform, right? But if you can see here, we don't have any data disk available in a virtual machine. Do you know why? Because we have not actually told the operating system of this virtual machine that you have now another data disk as well. Please start using it. You have just added one extra data disk at the Azure level, but the operating system of your virtual machine doesn't know it has one more data disk that it can use. Okay, so to enable that, what you can do is go to the server manager. If you go to the server manager, you will find an option saying file and storage services. Okay, if you go there, if you go to the disks, so now this unknown disk is the disk which we have added in our Azure portal, which is the extra 4 GB of memory. Okay, so what I'm doing is just right click and initialize. Okay, I have initialized my data disk, and after that create a volume. So new volume, next and next. So this is the size, volume size. Yes, I want the same size. So it will be allocated a drive letter by F. If you want anything else, you can choose from here. I am going with the F itself. Okay, so the file system it uses is a new technology file system. So I'm going to give some name to my disk. Let's say I'm going to give as data disk 1, the same one. Okay, so next and create. So now I am creating a data disk. I am actually enabling the data disk at the OS level. Okay, so now if I close here, if I go here, so you can see now the data, so the data disk which I have added, the drive letter, the F I have given is available here now, right? So it is like, instead of that, before that, you will not have any data disk before you initialize it, right? So after you have initialized, the partitions, you can use this data disk, right? So now what I'm going to do is I am okay. So I can see that Angai is asking some questions. So can you please wait until the end of the session, because we will take one session after this session, a Q and answer, so question and answers. There you can there we can discuss more about this questions. Okay, thank you so much. So now, so this is the data disk, extra data disk which I have created now, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save some data here. So some applications are critical, whatever the data you have, you can save here. As of now, I'm just going to create one simple file, one text file. Okay, I'm naming it as sample disk. Okay, once you, so this is the sample disk. Saving my file. So I have created this sample file in my data disk which I have created. Okay, now let's go back to Azure portal. If you go to the disks, so now I'm going to show you how you can take the snapshot of one disk and how you can directly, without doing any configurations, how you can just go ahead and create your disk with using the snapshots. Okay, as I have created one sample file in my disk, I'm just going here. This is the disk which I have created, right? So I'm going into my disk. If you can see here there is an option called create snapshot, right? I'm just clicking on the create snapshot. Yes. So I'm giving this name as snapshot 1. Okay. So yes, I need a full copy of my disk. So I have chosen it the same, and you can choose premium. Okay. So review and that. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the snapshot of my disk which I have created. Snapshot, it's like taking an image of your disk which you have created. So in the next time when you are going and when you are creating a data disk, if might be that for any other virtual machines, you don't need to go ahead and do all the configurations, might be in the Azure side or as well as in the OS side in the computer as well. Okay, so to show that, let me go and create one more virtual machine. So let's say I'm creating another virtual machine in the same virtual group, sorry, in the same resource group RG1, and I'm naming it as VM2. Okay, so I'm leaving as it is, VM2, and I'm giving a password. Okay, so I'm doing next. So premium, I'm just going ahead and just review and create. Okay, so here I'm creating another virtual machine. So this virtual machine, I'm going to add the data disk without doing any other configurations what we have done now. Okay, so let it create. So meanwhile, let us discuss a few things about the disk encryption. Okay, so normally whenever you have your own disk, whenever you have your disks to your virtual machines allocated, if you think about that disks will be physically placed in the Azure data center in the region which you have selected while creating your the resource. So it's a separate resource that will be actually created and allocated for you from data center, right? So it is actually present physically somewhere in the Azure data center on the region which you have selected, right? So there is a high chance that if something like if you're working with the banking projects or some critical data you're storing in this disk, so you don't want any unauthorized access to be happen on your data disk or in your OS disk, right? So you are having a critical data, you don't want any unauthorized users to use it. So what this Azure platform themselves doing is they are doing whatever the data you are storing in this disk, they are encrypting it. They are encrypting by default. So they are encrypting it with the keys and the algorithms actually which the platform is managing by themselves. Okay, but sometimes the customer to which you are working, they might not be happy with this approach, right? They don't want even the keys to be shared with the Azure platform which they have created. Might be sometimes they want their own keys to be used for encrypting the data to be more secured, right? So once the resource is created here, I'll show you how the encryption on the data is happening and how you can change to your own customer managed keys as well. Okay, let's go here. So before that, this is the virtual machine 2 which I have created now. If I go here in the disks, I have only one disk, which is the operating system disk, right? So I don't have any other disks here. So what I'm doing is go create and attach one new disk. Let's say I'm calling it as disk data. Okay. So now instead of going and just creating one new disk, what I can do is in the source type, I'm going to choose as a snapshot. If you remember, we have taken a snapshot of one disk which we have created with virtual machine 1, right? So I'm just going to use that snapshot here and I'm going to click as OK. Okay, and I'm going to save it. So I'm creating a new disk with the snapshot which I have already created with my virtual machine 1. So here I have just created one sample file. So think about that if you are having a like you have made so many configurations in one machine and you want to spin up the other virtual machine with the same settings so that you can work for something else. But the base, everything, whatever the configurations you have done already, you don't need to waste your time, right? You're just taking the snapshot and you're creating your disk with that so that it will be available for you like up to date so you can start working onto them. Okay, so I have created one data disk now. Let's see if it is success. Yes, it is done. Now, let's go to overview. And here, I'm going to connect to my virtual machine 2. So this is my second virtual machine. Okay, so I'm just going to download the file and I'm going to access it. So the same as I said, you can just go ahead and so username and the password. Okay. I'm going into the my virtual machine 2. Okay, let it load. Just a few more minutes. Okay, Angai, I can see that you're asking when shall we use attach existing disk. So you can attach the existing disk. For example, if you have created one disk with this virtual machine and you have detached to this virtual machine and you are actually deleting the virtual machine, but your data disk is still available. If you want to create the next data disk, let me show you how. Okay, for example, here. So if you are creating this data disk, right? If you are created with this virtual machine 1, but you have deleted all these resources, but you have not deleted the data disk, you are keeping it in the same resource group. Next time, if you are creating any other virtual machine, if you don't want to create this extra disk, you can just go ahead and add existing disk. This disk will be available for you, the name which you have given. You can just choose that. It means that whatever the data you have stored in the virtual, in that particular data disk, even you are deleting that virtual machine, that will not be deleted. So you can just deattach this data disk from this virtual machine, and you can attach to any other virtual machines while you are creating it. Okay, so that will be available. At that time, you will be using that second option, add the data disk, and you will be choosing the name of your data disk. Okay, so now, okay, so we have this virtual machine 2, which we have created now, right? So now if you go to the Explorer of my virtual machine 2, go to this PC. So can you see? Actually, in this second PC, I have not gone to server manager. I have not initialized the disk. I have not done anything. I have just added the snapshot of my first virtual machine, right? So even the drive letter which I have chosen, even the files which I have created inside it, so everything, it is like same. So after that, if I want to create any new files, if I want to work with other things, I can just proceed from here. I don't need to do the same thing again in my new virtual machine. So right, this is the advantage of going with taking the snapshot and using the same snapshots with your other virtual machines. Okay, so now let's go to the encryption. Now, if you go to the disk options, if you can see here, whatever the disk we have created, or might be the operating system disk which we have, it is, if you see the encryption type, it is SSE with PMK. It means that server-side encryption with platform managed keys. This is the default encryption that Azure platform by themselves, they are encrypting the data whichever you are storing in your disks. So this is like the keys which they are using for encrypting your data, that also will be managed by the Azure itself. But as I said, if your project is critical, if the customer wants to use their own keys, then you cannot go with this approach. You have to create, or you have to take the keys from your customer, and you need to create your disk so that the data in your disk could be encrypted with the customer managed ones, right? So I'll just show you how to do that. So let me go ahead and create one resource which is called as a key vault. I'll explain you what is key vault as well. Let's go to key vault. Create key vault. Okay, I'm choosing the resource group, same resource group, and I'm going to give key vault name as let's say key vault 1. Okay, I need to be giving some unique name so that it should not have been used by anyone at any time. Okay, each and every time you create the key vault, it should be unique. Okay, so I'm creating in the Australia Central. So yes, so days to retain default deleted vaults. It means that whatever the keys you are placing in this key vault, if you are deleting this key vault, in how many days you can again retrieve your data which we have deleted. So as of now, I'm selecting 7 days. So depending on your project requirement, you can choose on that. Okay, so go review and create. So I'm just creating one key vault. So what is a key vault? Key vault is nothing but simply, in simple words, I can say it as a locker. So in a locker, in a safe locker, you will be placing all your important and valuable things, right? So in the same way, Azure platform offering like locker is called as a key vault. Inside this, you can place all your important keys, like private keys or the certificates or the private anything. Like important secret passwords, whatever, you can manage all those secret things in your key vault. It is a managed resource that is providing you all the like it is providing you to store all your important information that you don't want to reveal to others. So sometimes when developers or someone else while developing the applications, so they don't need to mention the username and the password which needs to be while developing. They can just use the key vault, whatever the keys or whatever the passwords we have stored inside that, it will be automatically used. Okay, so that is the benefit of the key vault. So now I'm going to the key vault. As you can see, you can store your keys, you can store your secrets or passwords, or you can store your any important certificates that you are using. So all this you can be stored here. So I'm just going to the keys. If you have any key that was given by your customer, you can just directly use here. So if you don't have any key, as of now, I don't have any key. I'm just going to generate one new key here. Okay, so I'm going to name it as, let's say, key 1. Okay, so my new key is created. So now let me explain you something before here. Okay, so this is the actual workflow that is happening behind the picture. Okay, so you are using your customer managed keys, right? So it means that, so if you are like, so actually whatever the Azure platform they are offering is server-side encryption with the platform managed keys. If you want to do that server-side encryption with your customer managed keys, the workflow, whatever the happening in background is, so you are creating your Azure key vault and you are placing all your secrets here. Okay, so once you have placed it, your disks cannot directly access those keys to decrypt or encrypt the data. Those keys cannot be utilized by your disk directly. There is some resource in between them to make them communicate. So that resource is called as a disk encryption set. So disk encryption set actually grants the disk this disk an access to utilize this Azure key vault or the keys you have saved here. And those keys, how it can access those keys is by using the Active Directory identities. So when you have merged this data disk or your disk with your disk encryption set, it is having a capability to talk to Azure Active Directory. So it checks the your identity with the Azure Active Directory, and if you are the authorized user, then yes, it will grant you an access over the Azure key vault, so that that particular keys which you have stored here can be accessed. Okay, so if you are not authorized user, so the connection between them, it cannot be made. Okay, so now in the same thing I'm going to show you here. As you have seen, now I have created just a key vault and I have stored a key here inside, right? So I haven't done anything else. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to create one disk encryption set, which will be useful for me to communicate between my key vault and also my disks. Okay, so let me go to home, go to all resources, and I'm creating what it was called disk encryption set. Okay, so create. So I'm going to use, same resource group, and I'm going to name it as disk set. Okay, so now you are linking your key vault to the disk encryption set. So the key vault which you want to link, this is the one which I have created now, and the key which you want to use, this is the key I have created now. So it will automatically generate one version when your key is generated. So the version it has got is this one. So I'm choosing the default one. So this is my key vault and this is the key. So with this, I am attaching my key vault along with the key to my disk encryption set. Okay. And let me show you. So it means that I have placed my key here and I have created Azure Key Vault. Once I have done that, I have actually attached it to my disk encryption set so that whenever my disk encryption set is like merged with my disk, whatever the key is that is allocated through this key vault will be used. Okay, let me go back. Okay, so it's still the deployment is in progress. It will take approximately like 2 to 3 minutes to complete the deployment. That's the one thing. Okay, and okay, done. So now our deployment is done. So it means that I have created my disk encryption. Okay, so now if you go to the disk encryption, here you can see one error message. To associate a disk, image, or snapshot with this disk encryption set, you must grant permission to the key vault which you have attached. So it's saying that I have attached the key vault to my disk encryption set, but I need to grant permission to that disk encryption set to access my key vault itself. To do that, I can just go ahead and just click on that. So if you can see here, it's granting the permission successfully granted. Okay, so now completely my encryption set, my disk encryption set can use the key vault. Right, now come back and go to the virtual machine. Let's say I'm going to virtual machine 2, go to the disks. So this is the one which we have created already, right? So let me go ahead and create one more. So let's say I'm naming it as disk data 3. But this, as you can see, the logic unit number has changed automatically to 1 because this VM is going to recognize this disk as a with this number. Okay, so if you can see here, now I have an option. Okay, let me expand it. Okay, so if you see here, initially when I have an option of customer managed keys, but when I have scroll here, I didn't have anything because I have not created any encryption data set. Right now we have one encryption addressed with the customer managed keys. So this is the key which I have created and the key vault of mine. So I'm just going ahead and selecting this. Okay, so if you can click OK and save it, it means that you are creating the disk which you are asking it means like you are asking the disk to encrypt the data which you are storing in that disk to be managed with the customer managed keys. Okay, so let me go ahead and refresh. Okay, I have not edited, I think. Oh no. Okay, sorry, I think I have not edited it. Let me go ahead and create one. Bye-bye. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now, save. Okay. So I have created one disk now with asking it to encrypt the data with the customer managed keys. You can see here SSE with CMK. Server side encryption is happening now with the customer managed keys, the keys which I have created now. Okay, so this is the one type of encryption. So okay, let me go ahead and show you the another type of encryption. So another type of encryption is nothing but okay, let me okay. So another type of encryption is nothing but ADE. ADE is nothing but Azure Disk Encryption. Now we have seen SSE, server side encryption. So what is the difference between ADE and SSE? So SSE actually encrypts your data at rest. It means let's say if you are having some physical, this is the physical data center, Azure data center, in that your disks are physically placed. So the data which you are storing in that particular disk will be encrypted only when it is at rest. But whenever your virtual machine, the transfer between your compute and the storage is happening, during this communication, the data is still unencrypted with this SSE. The data is not encrypted while communicating between the compute power and the storage itself, which is this Azure description. Sorry, Azure Disk Encryption is offering you. It is actually a volume encryption. So this will encrypt your data at the volume level, and it will make sure even not only the data at rest, and also the data which is communicating between the compute power and also the storage will also be gone through encrypted keys. Okay, so another benefit of going with ADE when compared to SSE is SSE can only encrypt your OS disk and also your data disk. With this SSE, we cannot encrypt your temporary data disk. When we have created one VM, I have shown you one temporary disk, right? It had a drive letter D. So whatever the data you are storing for, even for the temporary purpose in the temp D, in the temp folder, it will not be encrypted if you are going with this SSE. But if you're going with this Azure Disk Encryption, it will, even the temporary data disk will also be encrypted. Okay, so let's see how we can encrypt our disk with this encryption methodology. Okay, so let's go to Azure platform. Okay, I need to cancel it. Clear all things. Okay, so now let's go to Azure platform. So what I'm doing here is I have created one resource group. In this resource group, I have one key vault already created. I don't have any keys here. You can see I don't have any keys here. Now let me go back to this resource group, and I'm going to create one virtual machine here. So I'll go to create. I'm creating one virtual machine. Okay, I want in this group. I'm naming it as VM5. Okay. I want, I'm changing it to just to East US. You can select any region, but I'm just going with this because of the limitation I have, as I shown you. In the subscriptions, you will be having a limited quota. Just a moment, I'll show you. Right. Okay. So actually in your subscriptions, if you go to the usage and the quotas, which I have shown you in my last session, so you will be having some limitations to use particular resources, particular amount of resources in particular region. So as you can see here, I have one network voucher, which I have already used. I can create virtual machines up to 10. I have already created 4. So like this, to avoid this confusion, I'm just changing the location to East US so that even though I don't know whether I have utilized everything or not, right? And now I can see I haven't utilized it completely. But if you don't want to take this, you can just go ahead and create in other region, or else if you want to create in your production purpose, if you want to create in the same region, you can just go ahead and request the increase quota. Okay, so just to avoid that, I'm doing in another region. Now let's go ahead and give username and password. Okay, and now go to this. Yes, great. So I'm creating one virtual machine again. Create. So the deployment has initialized now. So if you go to your resource group, if you can see the different resources that will be created here. Okay, the deployment is in progress. Let's just wait for a moment until it's create the virtual machine. So now our resource has been created successfully. Now let's go to the virtual machine. So now if you go to the disks, you can see the same, right? The disk is encrypted with the server-side encryption with the platform managed keys, right? If you want to, now I don't want, I want to encrypt my data with the Azure disk encryption, which is the second type, right? So what I am going to do is, I'm just going to my key vault. Let's go to the resource group. This is my resource group. So I'm going to my key vault. I'm going to create one key. Name as key 5. Create. Okay, so I have created one key. Now, in this key vault, I need to go to access policies. In this access policies, there is an option called Azure Disk Encryption for volume encryption. So this is the type Azure Disk Encryption. This is another encryption type which we can enable for encryption of data in our disk. So I'm going to just enable it, save. Okay, this I'm doing it in my key vault, right? So now I need to give the same access to my virtual machine as well. So I'm coming back to my resource group. This is my virtual machine, which I have created now, which has a platform managed key. So now, if you go to the overview, sorry. Okay, so a disk. So here we are having an option called additional settings, right? If you click on that, it will take you to the next page. Here you can see there is an option called encryption settings. What it's saying is Azure Disk Encryption, ADE, provides volume encryption for your operating system as well as your data disk. So if you want that, you can just go ahead and choose here. So it means which type only, which disk you want to encrypt with this type of encryption, only operating system disk or your both the disks. So as of now, I'm choosing OS disk. So then it will ask you the key vault name, the key which you have created in your key vault, which is going to utilize, and a default version which was created with your key as well. Okay, now let's go ahead and save it. So if you can see here, I have not created any encryption data set as like customer managed keys, right? So in the customer managed keys, I have created one data set in between to talk to the keys with so that the disks can talk with my key vault and the keys, right? So as here we if you're going with the Azure disk encryption, you can just directly go ahead in the VM itself. You don't need any additional resources. If you can enable here, it will directly talk to your key vault and I can utilize your keys. Okay, it's validating. Let it be. Okay, so it's updating this disk settings. Okay, so another useful with this, let me show you. So until it gets created, let's go. Okay. So until that gets created, let's go to home. Let's go to this virtual machine. So the disks. So as you know, I have created one disk here, which I have encrypted with the customer managed keys, right? So if you realize that I have not stopped or done anything to my virtual machine, I have just gone ahead and added one extra disk with this customer managed keys. So for in case if you want to change the encryption of this disk like OS disk or the disk which was already allocated, which was already encrypted with some other keys or some other methodologies, then what you need to do is you need to go ahead, you need to go to overview and you need to stop the virtual machine. You need to stop the virtual machine and then you can come ahead and go to your disk which you wanted to change the encryption, and you can just go ahead to the encryption and change the encryption type. If you can see here, it is disabled now. Encryption type, I can't choose anything. So I can't click even. So it is like it's disabled because if you can see here, it says that changes to the encryption settings can only be made when the disk is unattached or the managing virtual machines are deallocated. It means that you need to either deallocate the disk or you need to stop the virtual machine which it is attached to change the encryption type of the disk when it is already using that. Okay, so if we are going to overview, if you are stopping the disk and if you want, then you can come here. Then the options with using customer managed keys is also will be available for you. You can choose that and you can just save it so that whatever the disk you are having with this platform managed keys will also be changed to the customer managed keys. Okay, but if you are creating a new one, you don't need to stop the virtual machine. But if you are thinking to change already existing one, then you need to stop the virtual machine to change the encryption type. Okay, so let's see whether it has completed. Okay, so now go to the overview. This is the virtual machine which I have enabled with the Azure disk encryption, right? So now if you go to the disks, and you see here, the encryption type, it says that SSE with PMK and AD. It means server-side encryption with platform managed key. Along with that, it also encrypted with the Azure disk encryption as well. So as I told you, it is using the volume encryption. So the features actually it is using is like, okay, let me show you. Let me go and connect this virtual machine. I'm downloading the file to connect it. Okay, going to the more choices. Okay. VM5, this is the username I have given, and I'm giving the password. So this virtual machine disk is enabled with the Azure disk encryption type, so that now if I'm going ahead, okay. Now, if you can see here, encryption in progress, encryption of this C type by BitLocker drive, encryption has started. So it means that if we are using the Windows operating system, then this Azure disk encryption will actually use this BitLocker feature to lock your disks. If in case if you are using the Linux operating system virtual machine, then it will be encrypted. Then this Azure disk encryption will use DM encrypt methodology to encrypt your disk. Okay, so as it is a Windows operating system, it is using a BitLocker feature to encrypt your disk. If you go to the Explorer, here, let's go to this PC. And if you can see, this actually we have if you can see, there is some lock symbol here. It means that we have encrypted this disk with the Azure at a volume level. We're using this Azure disk encryption. You can ask me why then this temporary data storage has not been locked, why it is left alone. Because if you remember, when I was creating the, when I was allowing the access, I have chosen only the OS disk in the virtual machine while I was allowing encryption, setting the Azure disk encryption in my virtual machine. I have allowed only the OS disk. If you would have chosen the both OS and data disk, then this temporary storage will also be locked, and also if any data disk if I had here, that will also be locked with this Azure disk encryption. So with this, you can't it's like more secured way to store your data at both level, even at the rest, even at the volume level, even while transferring in between the compute power and storage. It protects your data from end to end. Okay, so this is the advantage of having a Azure disk encryption. Okay. So I hope I have shown you all the things which I wanted to say today. So as an overview, we can just we have seen how we can add the new data disk, and also we have seen how we can initialize that added data disk at the VM level and how you can use it. And also we have seen how you can take the snapshot of one disk and how you can create the another disk using the same snapshot instead of creating and configuring everything from end to end. Okay, and along with that, we have also seen the encryption type. By default, that was like a server-side encryption with the platform managed keys. We have seen how we can use our customer managed keys for encrypting the data, which is SSE with CMK, and we have seen how we can create key vaults and disk encryption sets for allowing the disk to access the keys. And also we have seen how we can manage the encryption with the same Azure disk encryption. And also we have seen what are the advantages over the SSE. Also, right, this is the few important things that you need to know when it comes to the disk. If you're working with the data and the disk, particularly in your production environment, you should have an idea about. Suppose if your client is asking if they want the data, I mean, they want the new disk that needs to be created with all the basic configurations they already have. You can just go ahead and do a snapshot of the previous one, and you can just go ahead and create a new one, right? So these are the few things that you need to be known regarding this managed disks. Okay, I'm just going ahead and deleting all my resources because I don't want to be charged. So just a moment, please. Okay, so I can go to my resource group. So I have two resource group. I'm going to this one. So so sometime before Angaya has asked how we can add the disk, right? So here, if you are deleting the resources, if I'm clicking the resources, whatever the resources I'm choosing here, that will be deleted. So if I want to use that data disk to other VM, I don't delete that data disk particularly. I'll choose some other. So I'm leaving that data disk and I'll delete all other resources. So when I create my new virtual machine, I go to the option add existing disk and I can choose this name so that this disk will be automatically added to that virtual machine. Okay, so as of now, I don't want anything. I'm just, instead of selecting one by one, I'm just going ahead and deleting all the resource group. So it makes sure that whatever the resources we have created or the resources which were automatically created while creating your virtual machines or any other resources, that will be automatically created and you won't be charged for anything. Okay, I'm just giving my name. And also I want to go ahead and delete this resource group as well. So delete resource group. So when I delete this, all the key vaults or all the virtual machines or the resources or the keys that I have stored here, everything will be deleted. So remember, if you want to retain that keys, you can do it before 7 days, as you have done while creating the key vault. You have chosen the retrieve data 7 days, right? So we can get it back. But if we don't want, you can just leave it. It is up like maximum days you can retrieve is up to 90 days. So you can set until then. Okay, so I'm just deleting this group as well. Okay, cool. So one more thing I just wanted to let you know is while if you're practicing by your own in your own lab, please make sure that all the resources whichever you have created has been deleted. You can either see in this delete resource group, or you can just go ahead. Just a moment. So you can either see in the notifications, making sure that all the resources has been deleted. Sometimes there might be some resources that had not deleted properly or completely. Then what you can do to make sure is, you can just go to the home, go to your subscription, and go to the resources in your subscription. So whatever the resource groups or resources, anything and everything you are created in this Azure, it will be linked to an active subscription. So as of now, I have one subscription. So whatever the different resource groups and data the resources I have created, it is in there. So if you can see all the resources here, if all resources gets deleted successfully, then if you come to your subscription and if you come to the resources, you won't be having any resources. If there is anything, just go ahead and delete that resource, so that to make sure that it is not charging you. Okay. Okay, now let me stop the recording and we'll see some of the question and answers as we have passed the time. Sorry. So I can see there are a few questions in the chat. So probably I may not be able to answer everything. I'll try to go through some, and rest of the questions I'll make sure that I will answer you through the LinkedIn group, in the technical group of Cloud and Loud, and also in the newsletter. Sorry, in the Cloud and Loud Tech group. Okay. Let me go ahead.